Hi, this is T with TeaQuilts, and I'm here today to do another block that's called Friendship Link. So let's just get right into it. Again, I've done all the cutting before starting the video. Again, these blocks are made for my quilt guild as optional blocks to be put into a drawing. And for this particular block, we're using a light gray background. And then you need to have two colors, a dark gray and a dark red. So with the background fabric, you need one 7 1/4 inch square, which is this square here, and then you cut it twice diagonally. You'll need two 5 3/8 inch squares, and you'll cut them once diagonally. So I have the second set of squares underneath. And then last, you'll need 5 2 5/8 inch squares. Now from the gray and red, you'll need the exact same pieces cut. So from both of those fabrics, you're going to cut 2 each, 2 5/8 inch wide by 9 inch strips. 2 from each fabric, 2 5/8 inch by 4 3/4 inch strips. And then lastly, you'll need two 2 5/8 inch squares. So the next step in this block is to sew background squares to the B and C fabrics, which is my gray and my red. And I'm going to do that for a total of 4. So I'm going to sew those and then I will come back. Next step is to sew my 4 3/4 inch rectangles to each side of the 2-piece unit that we just made. And I'm just going to go ahead and pull one of these out. And I'm going to go ahead and show you the next step, although this unit isn't sewn, just to save some time with me coming back and forth to the camera. I am going to sew these triangles onto this side of the unit once I sew this block section together. So I'm going to do that for all 4 sets and then I will come back. Just for clarity, the triangle that I attached was cut from the 7 1/4 inch square that was cut twice diagonally. So I just don't want you to get confused on which one to use. So the next step is to add the 9 inch strip across the top. This time we're going to use the opposite fabrics. They're not going to match this time. So I'm going to put this strip onto this one. So the red strip is going to go on the gray. And then on the red, we're actually going to put the gray strip set. And we're going to do that for both sets. So I will do that and then I will return. I'm back with my sewn pieces, and I noticed that this block has implemented the partial seam method. So first what I'm going to do is just lay this block out so that you can see what the design is. And then once I get all of these seams sewn, these last triangles here that I've cut in half are my corner triangles, and they're actually going to go across the color corners and create the corner of the block, and that will put the block on point. But before we can sew this block together, we had that extra 2 5/8 inch square. And so in order to sew this block together, this square sits in the middle. But in order to sew that, you'll have to start with what's called a partial seam. And so what I have done is I have gone ahead and stitched from the edge of where this square meets the block unit, and I've sewn halfway down, and then I just stopped. And I have just this hanging piece of fabric here. And this seam is actually going to get finished last. So what happens is, once I press this seam up where I stitched and put it back into position, you can see that this now lines up even with that. So I will be going and sewing this onto that part. And then once that is sewn and the seam is pressed, I can then go ahead and work my way around the block, adding pieces as I sew each section. So I can then go ahead and sew this seam. So I'm going to go and sew 1, 2, 3 seams, and then I'll come back and show you the last ones. I'm back, and I have sewn this seam here, number 1, and then I sewed this seam number 2, and then this seam number 3. So now what I didn't do was sew that last seam. Remember when I told you this partial seam would be finished with the last seam? So you actually fold this back on itself, and then you stitch overlapping a few stitches, I'd say about 3 or 4 stitches, and then you stitch down to the end. And when you do that, then your total block has been sewn around that partial seam. So all those units have been sewn around the partial seam. And then my last step, which I'm going to go ahead and do as well while I'm in my sewing area, is to sew these triangles on the corner. And that is your block that's called Friendship Links. So I will sew that. I will come back and show you the completed block in the next video clip. Okay, I'm back with the final block. It's all been pressed, and I've added my corner triangles as well. And now that I have this done, the block is 15 1/2 inches unfinished, and I did not square it up to take off my dog ears, but if I was going to sew this into a block, I would definitely square up my blocks, but I'm going to leave that for whoever wins the blocks at our guild meeting. So I hope you enjoyed this block, and I had fun showing it to you, and I will see you in my next video. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and thumbs up this video.